Повертаємося до наших діалогів в чаті.
Dear friends, we are back to our broadcasting. We are back in the air, and we are resuming our dialogues in time devoted to the 5th anniversary of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. We are happy to welcome those speakers who used to be our speakers, our supporters, our founders 5 years ago, at the moment when the UCMC was founded. I'm happy to welcome Mr. Bystrytsky, who 5 years ago was executive director of the Renaissance Foundation in Kiev, who contributed much to the establishment of this crisis media center, and we are very grateful to you for all your efforts. The International Renaissance Foundation contributed much to Ukrainian reform process, and today Mr. Bystrytsky occupies an important position. He is the leader of non-partial independent platform, which is designed to analyze the election process in Ukraine based on the constitutional grounds and provisions. So would you please say a couple of words? Today, actually, we observe a competition between different groups of experts willing to support the government, and there's work, there's strive. We see not just among Ukrainian experts, but also among international foreign experts. There are ideas to create the Marshall Plan for Ukraine, and international experts want to contribute to such a plan. We are thinking about immediate actions like anti-corruption work, establishment of the anti-corruption court. Also, we should clearly distinguish about short-term actions, about middle-term actions, and long-term measures, strategic measures that should be planned and taken. We should think about policies. It's obvious that previous stage of the think tank work, the experts' work, when they produce their opinion, then supply that opinion to the authorities, and then authorities and the power did nothing. That's why we should continue our expert work in close cooperation with the agencies, with governmental agencies. The international experts would not be able to contribute anything valuable if not working directly inside the agencies, keeping in mind all the specificities of Ukraine. This was from March 2014. Actually, at that time, you managed to predict a lot of things which happened later. What ideas, what beginnings out of that moment had implemented, had become realities in that time. Thank you, Natalia, for the invitation invitation to this event. I think 5 years is good. Maybe 10 years of UCMC would be good, but not 25 years, of course. When the International Renaissance Foundation first time decided to support the establishment of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, it was at night when I received a telephone call from Ivana Klimpush-Sensadze. Actually, first 18 months we supported the UCMC quite intensively, and then we allowed you to become self-supported. Today, I continue to think about what I mentioned 5 years ago at that conference, which you showed. First of all, this is about international experts. Striving to start reforms in post-Maidan period, we tried to create policies. We wanted to create reform policies in different areas. At that time, IRF started to support expert or advisory councils, groups of experts who tried to develop policies of reforms, different plans and strategies. We had been doing that in the past, even before Maidan revolution. But after Maidan, the government officials, here I not mean just the members of the government, but also presidential administration, the parliament, had become more open to the expert opinion, and the experts felt this recognition. Before the Maidan, a lot of experts produced many policies, but this was just like wishes and nothing more. So at that moment, after Maidan, during 2014-2015, we felt the need in expert opinion and readiness to follow up the policies that they suggested, and a lot of useful things were started at that time, like decentralization reform, which was launched and which is moving rather actively despite of some delays. The public administration reform, which is also very important when Ukraine is shifting from command and administrative system to the system of public policies. We also launched the educational reform and contributed much to the development of educational policies. We put many our hopes on the healthcare reform, but the healthcare reform experienced a lot of delays. It started actually only after Ms. Suprun became the executive minister, but under Kvitashvili it was not launched. Also the e-governance reform. And we also wanted to see Ukrainian Crisis Media Center independent from the government and independent from the oligarchs. And we, from the very beginning, we were sure that the UCMC had to impartially inform the international community about reforms in Ukraine. So the biggest achievement of the UCMC was and is this awareness of international community about Ukrainian reforms, which was communicated in foreign languages. I believe that the international partnership around Ukraine, which was successfully established by the President of Ukraine, was very much promoted and supported by the UCMC. For example, the policy of sanctions in that number had received the support from the UCMC. But since 2015, something had changed in that contrapunct which appeared in 2015 when Abramovichus had stepped back and created the crisis inside the government. For me, it was the moment when the active reform process had struck against the realities, old-fashioned realities, that real changes had faced the huge oppression from the shadow schemes. The reforms started to reveal the corrupt schemes which used to exist in all the times, and at that very moment the hampering process began, and the huge way back, the huge backlash in reforms from Maidan, when the governments attempted to introduce electronic declarations for non-governmental organizations. Fortunately, that amendment to tax law was not passed. The president at that moment invited us to a meeting, and at that meeting he explained that MPs were very insistent in introduction of the e-declarations for non-governmental organizations. The decisive step against was made by the Constitutional Council. Made its decision about non-criminalization of the deeds, of corrupt deeds, which were self-confessed, self-revealed. For me, again, it is a manifestation of all the difficulties with anti-corruption work. Also, I would like to point out to the administrative reform when the public policy departments appeared in the ministries. This is for the first time when the executive authorities had shifted to the public decision-making process. This time, the cabinet of ministers, Prime Minister Groisman, Minister Sayanka, had launched the policy process inside the cabinet. They are now thinking about public policy process. Those policy process departments, they bring together stakeholders from different areas and assist the minister, line minister, in policy development. This this process works, and in result of it, the policies become realistic. And now I will come closer to the assessment of UCMC. I believe that as of this moment, as of today, it might be very useful to organize bilateral meetings of presidential candidates, two candidates who will come to the second round of elections, to organize the meeting of those candidates with the experts. I understand that this might be very useful event. Thank you so much for your opinion. I believe that the country had been staring and taking a pause before the presidential elections, and we will take the public well-being in the focus of our attention. On behalf of UCMC, we had made an official statement that we would impartially approach all the candidates and analyze the programs carefully. My question to you is as follows. Speaking about those milestones which you mentioned. Last week I met with the Ukrainian Catholic University, and Mr. Gritsak mentioned that the latest research of values proves that the values in society change more quickly, more rapidly than the political values. And your recollections about e-declarations, etc., confirmed that opinion to me. So now coming back to your recollections, whether it was possible to do something differently during those 5 years. I do not think that we are in the vicious circle. I would like to pick up opinion of Mr. Gritsak. I disagree with him. Tomorrow, Ms. Oksana Zabushko and me will have discussion, we'll have public discussion about eternal Ukraine and poet and its poet Taras Shevchenko. So these days, I'm thinking how many people and how many politically proactive people, representatives of different NGOs, are oriented to something short-term things instead of the national idea of Ukraine. Many potential voters, including potential voters from from civil society are ready to choose, are ready to vote for a candidate who are far away from Ukrainian identity against the other candidates. So this is a phenomenon in Ukrainian politics. It is like a protest action, which together with old policies rejects from Ukrainian identity. I will try to develop more on this. Ukraine's existence as a state is closely rooted in its Ukrainian legitimization. Ukraine's legitimization is based on the feeling of affiliation with the Ukrainian identity, and many modern social and political philosophers suggest that many nationalistic movements which had become a trend is a manifestation of something very important. The freedom is not possible only as a liberal notion. The freedom is possible only as a liberal phenomenon in some type of community. And today I am asking myself whether the protest against authorities instead of promotion of positive things like anti-corruption work is able to bring to victory very negative things which are able to ruin everything up to the foundation. This might result in a very tough post-electoral period, and I would like to I would like to suggest that today's president should respond to a criticism which he never responded to criticism during all these years. And when I am criticized for this my position, I usually used to say that unfortunately it is your behavior which has brought a lot of people to this protest, which is aimed at counteraction to any authorities. Thank you very much. I believe that the threat of populism in Ukraine is nourished both at the micro level and macro level. We have people in the room who would like to ask questions. Tanya, the floor is yours. Thank you, Yevhen, for your intervention and reflections. All of us understand today that we're in the midst of examination and that we are facing today a lot of challenges. At the same time, as a civil society, as part of expert community. We are in a very responsible position. So how would you formulate the task of the experts for the next 1-2 months? Do you mean the civil society expert community? Yes. Actually, you repeated Natalia's question. What will be the mission of the civil society experts in nearest future? For example, RPR, reanimation package of reform, will remain demanded because their role is to act in the absence of a dialogue between citizens and the power. I had mentioned establishment of the policy directorates and the ministries which had to substitute the civil society experts, but they have not substituted them yet. Well, so what will be the function of the analysts in the future? In the United States, in Europe, they have a lot of think tanks and analyst centers. The civil society organized in think tanks, they are needed in those points where the authorities do not interfere into self-organization, self-governance of citizens. In German, this is called Bürgerlichkeit. This space, this community is able to produce protests, ideas, which in a form of policies are offered later to the society. These experts, they work in the areas where the authorities usually do not interfere. They are like a way of everyday self-organization of the citizens, like the condominium councils, like the development councils, etc. Or visas, for example. We had gained the visa-free regime not only thanks to the authorities, but because the recommendations of the expert community suggestions were passed by the government and our European colleagues. So this niche of self-organization is a very creative space and very creative engine for the powers. Actually, those 5 years, they very much demonstrate unfulfilled or unfinished dialogue with the civil society. When the ministers started to cooperate with the civil society and civil society opposed the corruptionists, which quite often manipulate with public opinion. mass media had to counteract to the manipulations with public opinion. I believe that our leaders should maintain that public communication with civil society on the everyday basis, not just on the basis of inauguration speeches on very special occasions. I believe that our leaders should make statements on the most important, even court decisions or customs authority decisions, for example. And there were many such cases when the protests appeared, and this manifested the weakness of communication between the powers and citizens. So we have to nourish that third class of the civil society experts, which have to develop the true public policy in Ukraine. In the International Renaissance Foundation, we know quite well that international donors provide money for the general human values, like the rule of law, like freedom, a lot of freedoms. I'm Любов Цибульська. I'm representing a group of the hybrid threats analysis in the UCMC, speaking about turbulent times in the midst of which we live today, speaking about the national threats existent inside the country. We all feel that at some moment civil society and experts found out that during that 5 years we existed in different fields. I mean, the experts and the rest of Ukrainian society. We found out that Ukrainian society, Ukrainian community in general, is rather childish, so to say. And we found out a lot of challenges in it. So how can Ukrainian society overcome this childishness and not coming back to the propaganda, and how we can save efforts in working with this childishness. So first of all, we should not waste our time not only on propaganda, but also on such moralizing that you should be like this, you should be like that. What could be done, actually? Our electoral council, our electoral advisory council, which comprises 28 members, had faced the issue, what shall we do during elections? Well in advance, we were aware that we would have a lot of candidates. Of course, we cannot say that we just prefer this or that candidate. For intellectual people, we see the shortcomings of all the disadvantages of all the candidates. That that's why we came to the following conclusion, which could be, this approach could be applied during parliamentary elections. So we decided to work for the conscientious, well-informed decisions. Quite often we choose emotionally. I like this or that candidate because I like this smile, I like this type of behavior with dogs, I like his or her charisma. So we decided that people should vote according to their mind, not heart. But in order to be able to act this way, we should point out to the logic of the presidential campaign. Having analyzed the Constitution, we came to conclusion that the presidential candidate should promise only the things which are in his or her scope in line with the Constitution. He can make decisions about the foreign policy, he can appoint the supreme judges, he can make international visits and promote trade relations of Ukraine, he can appoint the head of the SBU, etc. But the president is unable or has very restricted opportunities in the area of the economy. He can initiate the draft laws, the bills, and the president is able to submit the address to the nation. And that's all his functions. Then we had formulated 5 chapters of questions and disseminated these questionnaires among the candidates. Yesterday we had received the questionnaire with answers of Mr. Sadavi, who had withdrawn his candidate from the race. Actually, when the candidate keeps saying, I will change the constitution and thus will implement my economic promises, so that's not true. So we should base our assumptions on the realistic provisions of the Constitution. So our approach is to make the presidential agenda as realistic as possible and allow people to understand which presidential candidate is serious about his or her promises or not. Of course, people can choose not by mind but by heart. The choice by heart should be devoted to this feeling of unity of Ukrainian nation. I'm Olesa Drashkaba from UCMC. As far as I know, the IRF now is also supporting the candidates' debate. My opinion about 2 candidates of the presidential race is that they simply reject to communicate with the media. And one of those candidates could be some great nothing, and the voters can project any expectations, extrapolate any expectations upon this candidate. And what can we do in this situation? We have the real risk that we have two candidates which ignore all the journalists up to the very end, and will be later on will be simply shocked with the wisdom of those candidates when they become president, and especially against the background of today's authorities. I'm a bit scared to answer your question, but nevertheless I will answer. We have three options. We have to analyze and to make an informed decision. And this will produce positive results. We should be firm. Being a journalist, you should criticize that mad talk shows. So this is one option. The second option is as follows. Those candidates who are not silent, Mikhail Bulgakov has a play, a drama called Pushkin, where Pushkin never appears, but everybody plays the image of Pushkin and creates his marvelous image. So what we can do, for example, you have a silent candidate, and people award this silent candidate with a lot of virtues, imaginary virtues. The civil society has to recognize, has to choose the candidate who wishes to cooperate with the civil society, but not just in a form of welcoming address, but in the form of constructive dialogue. How do you perceive me? What imperfections do you see in my policy? So let's work together. And the third option, let's assume that we have a candidate who keeps saying that we are in a vicious circle, and we have to break this vicious circle. Please believe me that I'm an expert in vicious circle. So it's possible to overcome a vicious circle only going deeper and deeper into the source of all your troubles. And this is the only way how to criticize such things. It is not possible to ruin everything and then start from scratch. It never in history that were successful. Unfortunately, it's a bit late to discuss these things now, but we should start. Better late than never. And the last question, probably. Mr. Bystrytsky, I have a question to you as a philosophy and an intellectual person. In 5, 10, or 25 years, how do you see Ukraine about the future? I hope it will pass through several shocks, including several Maidan revolutions, but afterwards it won't be Maidan of a sort that we witnessed last time. This will be democratic Maidan revolution. Looking at the situation with the biggest, I can see that the civil society still opposes corruption, that it is united, not atomized. This again shows that the reforms will continue because we do not have any other way out. I'm not sure whether in 5 or 10 years we will become the EU or NATO country, but we nevertheless will move in that direction. You have asked a question with one complexion inside. Probably some of you visited Poland. I can now recollect those times when home appliances were taken to Poland for resale from Ukraine. This again underscores that Ukraine has a lot of talents, a lot of potential in people. This suggests that at the moment when Ukraine overcomes its romantic love to its politicians and overcomes its common style nomenclature, Soviet nomenclature style elites, which are closely related to the oligarchs. I hope this would happen within next 2-3 years. So as soon as we have all those preconditions, Ukraine would start its successful and rapid movement to the future. You know, people, you know how our people are talented when they're taken separately, but when we are all together, we somehow become more stupid. You are young and you have all the future in front of you. Thank you for such an optimistic conclusion. I'm happy of this productive discussion, and now we are waiting for the Skype connection with Ms. Rebecca Harms from the European Parliament. She will tell us about that Europe to which Ukraine strives to integrate.
Rebecca Harms була однією.
Rebecca Harms was one of the first foreign participants, foreign speakers of the UCMC in March of 2014. And we are happy that she immediately agreed to talk to us today after Marta Bilas invited her.
Нам треба налагоджувати сильніші технологічні зв'язки.
Це терміново перейти від конфронтації до співробітництва. Рада, як демократично обрана інституція в цій країні, має виконувати свою роботу, а тимчасовий уряд також має робити свою роботу. Ви маєте підготувати вільні та справедливі вибори. Це дуже важливо 25 травня, а після буде потреба переходити до парламентських виборів для того, щоб перервати цей процес. Я можу повторити, цей процес антиукраїнський, він не в сенсі того, що ми, як представники Євросоюзу, обговорюємо з політиками українськими і в цьому усьому бачимо виклик. Після того, як Росія захопила Крим, і також перед нами тепер стоять загрози вздовж кордону на сході України. І я можу закликати тільки всіх тих, хто хоче демократичних змін в Україні. Співробітничайте з урядом, ставте питання, критикуйте, коли тільки необхідно, тому що є необхідність того, щоб були дуже критичні дебати проведені. Доброго дня, Ребеко, чи нас чуєте? Так, у нас дуже поганий зв'язок. У нас технічна проблема. Нормально, ми вас гарно чуємо, бачимо вас. Дякуємо за те, що ви знайшли час виступити перед нами. Ми побачили частину вашого відео з 2014 року. Ми дуже вдячні, що ви тоді були з нами в той дуже критичний час, коли Україна була на самому вразливому етапі. Ви тоді підкреслили, наскільки важливо те, щоб демократія була в Україні, щоб ми пройшли президентські вибори, парламентські вибори. Це, здається, наче ми це вже зробили. Чи можете нам трошки розказати, дивлячись ззовні через 5 років, з вашої точки зору, що відбулося, і що б ви хотіли, щоб відбулося, і що має відбутися за наступні 5 років? Це довгий перелік, про який потрібно поговорити, довгий перелік питань. По-перше, я хотіла би сказати, що я не українка, але я друг України, який намагається відслідковувати те, що ми розуміємо, є договором між тими, хто були на Майдані, тими, хто були активними на перших виборах під час Майдану та тими політиками, які підписали разом з нами угоду про асоціацію Євросоюз Україна. І виконуючи це з європейської точки зору, для мене, для багатьох моїх колег в Європейському парламенті за останні роки ми завжди мали два завдання і два виклики перед нами. Це окупація, що продовжується, та війна в Криму та на Донбасі. З одного боку, ви завжди маєте знаходити засоби, щоб продемонструвати солідарність українців. З іншого боку, є великий виклик процесу реформ. І як друзі України, ми, думаю, дуже були залучені до цього процесу, який слугує кращому майбутньому України. І також це те, чого хотіли українці, коли вийшли на Майдан в 2013 році. Можливо, питання про те, які ваші очікування, тому що попередній доповідач говорив про те, що Україна сприйняття Україною Європи і бажання України бути разом з Європою тільки посилилося за останні роки. Дослідження кажуть нам, що більше 86% українців хочуть, щоб ми колись стали членами Євросоюзу. 45% бачать, що в якийсь момент країна має приєднатися до НАТО, хоча це, можливо, не в найближчому майбутньому. Що це не дивно, що більше і більше українців переконуються в цьому шляху на захід, так би мовити, до Європейського Союзу і також в НАТО. Це не може бути по-іншому, тому що особливо з того часу, як Кремль та пан Путін пішли війною проти України, і це було під час підготовки угоди про асоціацію, вони пішли війною проти суверенного бажання України мати угоду про асоціацію з Євросоюзом. Якщо ви хочете, то агресія Росії з самого початку була агресією і проти Євросоюзу, і його стратегії східного партнерства. Для мене зрозуміло, що цей рух в Україні став більше сильним і більше про європейським, але в той самий час, спостерігаючи звідси все більше викликів для тих, хто підтримує Європу в Європі, більше викликів є в різних країнах, і коли готуються вибори до Європейського парламенту цього року, яким чином це впливає на бажання України, до якої Європи буде потенційно приєднуватися Україна у майбутньому? Я не думаю, що Європа змінить настільки у порівнянні з тим, якою вона є тепер. Євросоюз настільки складний наднаціональний союз, і ви маєте знову знаходити політичні компроміси за великим столом, де зустрічається Рада Європи. І також цей процес, в якому Європарламент має слово, він не призведе до великих змін. Я знаю, що в Україні є дуже багато занепокоєнь щодо зміни Європейського Союзу, щодо націоналістичних та правих тенденцій. Я гадаю, що європейські вибори, якщо всі з європейських партій, проєвропейських партій будуть правильно працювати, то європейські вибори будуть гарантувати більше стабільності, ніж тепер. Я погоджуюся з текстом, наприклад, який опублікував Еммануель Макрон сьогодні по всіх країнах Євросоюзу. Але для України, я гадаю, те, що найбільше важливо, це окрім оборони проти президента Путіна та Кремля, проти цієї агресії, те, що найважливіше, це дійсно продовжувати процес реформ. Цей процес, в якому Євросоюз, а також і Сполучені Штати все більше і більше разом залучені. Цей процес має продовжуватися. І те, чого я хвилююся, я слідкую за виборчою кампанією через обмеження мови. Те, що мене хвилює, це те, що я спостерігаю в виборчій кампанії тепер, те, що відбувається. Ребека, у нас тут аудиторія. Я хотіла би, щоб у них також був шанс поставити питання, якщо є якісь.
To Rebecca. Таня Горкова. Таня Горкова.
Hello, Rebecca. I'm Tatiana Garkova from International Outreach at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We met several times. You started talking about elections, and this topic is crucial, is vital for every Ukrainian now. And my question is for you, seen from Europe, seen from Germany, what are the major concerns about Ukrainian elections? What about the threats of populism, absence of reforms, etc.? What are the major concerns about?
So what we hope is that so especially the whole of the pro-European camp in Ukraine is not fighting each other by the candidates running again like hell, and is not falling back into this attitude that so in Ukraine, like in many other Eastern European countries, if one party is in power, they always claim that only they are the true Europeans, the true Democrats, etc., etc. And if the others are taking over, then it's really getting like hell in Ukraine. So I know that nothing is granted in a country like Ukraine. No stability is really granted. But what I see is that the election campaign with, for example, the discussion of impeachment or prosecution by Prosecutor General of one of the candidates, or major actions of the Constitutional Court against main achievements of the reform process in the fight against corruption. So I observed during the last weeks, I observe a political escalation which is not in the interest of Ukraine, which is not in the interest of a fair election campaign, which serves the information of the audience, and will also for sure will damage the reputation of Ukraine in the European Union.
Yeah. Also, just for the context with the previous speaker, we discussed that whoever makes it to the second round, it might be beneficial for us to hold a very open discussion and debate to be able to ask all of the questions that Ukrainians are interested in terms of what will be the future track record of whoever has a chance to win in the most likely second round. I still want to ask a question, I think, because in Ukraine, especially, I think with the community of UCMC, which is here, we're all aware of our own kind of homework and the fact that, you know, not everything has happened in the last 5 years in terms of the reforms process as we would have loved it to, but there is progress. On the side of the European nations, I remember when we were starting UCMC, one of the questions that we had to address was the sale of Mistrals by France to Russia. Believe it or not, but back in March 2014, this was still the issue. And there was some considerable effort spent to also put that on the table and to try and convince France not to do it. The big thing on the debate right now, of course, in Europe is Nord Stream 2. So I think from your perspective, as someone who is following the events very, very closely and analyzes deeply, do you feel there will be more understanding of the fact that Nord Stream 2 is not an economic project, but that it truly has a chance to influence in very positive, or depending on a decision or final decision on how it's going to evolve? Or what is your assessment? What will happen?
So what we discussed in Brussels since long is the proof that most of the politicians in the EU understand that Nord Stream 2, like all pipelines planned from third countries to the EU, are not simply business projects, but are of major importance for stability and security in the European Union. And this gas directive, which we renegotiated now with the Romanian presidency, also proves this. What we achieved as rules for pipelines arriving to the European Union territory from third countries is not yet the end of Nord Stream 2, but it requires that Nord Stream 2, and the same would be for South Stream, but also for pipelines from other countries, not from Russia. So they have to comply with the market regulation for gas infrastructure and gas supply, which so far had been fulfilled only for EU territory. And this is changing the conditions of the business for Gazprom with the European Union. My guess is that since Russia reacted meanwhile very aggressively towards this new decision in the EU, so even Germans might rethink and should rethink the project. The announcement of last week by Energy Minister of Russia that from that moment when Nord Stream 2 will operate, they will cut all gas transit via Ukraine. This announcement is the proof that me and others, with our evaluation of the strategic goal and the unfriendly goal of the Gazprom project, has been proven. I think during the last weeks, lots of news on Russian strategy against the West were discussed. If you include also the debate on the INF Treaty, the Nuclear Disarmament Treaty, you can say that Europeans understand better and better that Russia is not following peaceful ideas towards us, and why should we continue, also as Germans, to import natural gas from Russia, to pay high prices for this, so that Putin in the end has new money to fuel his nuclear weapons program, and to invest more in the Russian army to underline his aggressive ideas against the EU and against the West. I think there is still hope that Nord Stream 2 will fail.
Great, thank you so much. On this optimistic note, we very much thank you for your participation and being with us. We believe that in the last 5 years, there are huge milestones that we and our international partners have achieved in much better understanding the whole scope of hybrid threats, unfortunately, from the Russian Federation, and there is a little bit more that needs to be done for our Western partners to understand the level of economic influence, which makes European states sometimes, a little bit too dependent. So we wish you best of luck in all of your efforts. I know that you work a lot with your colleagues in Germany and on the EU level in educating and explaining and analyzing together. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, and sorry for the technical problems.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
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 Z nami była Rebeka.
That was Rebecca Harms, who is the real friend of Ukraine, the representative of German parliament, and a big expert on Ukraine, on Russia, on the region. Thank her for joining us now in 2019. Now we will invite Pavlo Sheremeta to take the floor.
Pavlo Sheremeta is invited to the microphone. Pavlo, we recollected you today's morning. Pavlo was that very person who sent me an SMS on March 2014. He used to be the Minister of Economy in the first post-Maidan government, and we together tried to oppose that a communicational challenge that we had immediately upon Maidan. Let's look at one of your insights made back in March 2014. That's good that it's not from August 2014. Mr. Bystrytsky also reflected on those changes in the governments.
Was to bring financial resources into the country, and again, you know the news quite well. Let me just say we're on track. The IMF mission is in Kyiv. I had a meeting with them yesterday. I have another meeting with them tomorrow morning. There was another meeting the day before yesterday, so it's a full-fledged work. You might have lots of questions about that, but let's bear in mind that it's at the moment it's so-called investigatory. In Ukrainian, українською вони поки що досліджують ситуацію, вивчають ситуацію. It's the research, it's investigation going on, right? So I understand that the mission would be ready with ideas after a weekend, and we obviously look forward to those discussions as well. Now, my immediate priorities on my position, I express them in social media, and by the way, I still keep my Facebook page, and it's being mirrored two ways by the Facebook page of the ministry. In addition to bringing necessary resources into Ukrainian reserves and the Ukrainian budget, there are three things that we are dealing with right now. Number one, it's making the process of public procurement, державні закупівлі, transparent, прозорими, and corruption-free. We have three drafts of ideas, let me put it this way. They're expressed in the new versions of laws. Could be old versions of laws are on the table. At the moment at the ministry. Cabinet of Ministers will discuss that in the next 5 days at most. And we'll be ready to give something to the Parliament.
Окей, тобто такі драстичні були зразу.
So there were drastic plans, and some aspects of that had become implemented and had brought a lot of good things, a lot of good fruit to Ukrainian economy. These were really drastic plans when we had our treasury empty, totally empty. Yeah, I recollect that stress, that burden of responsibility upon your shoulders when you had to decide what to do. 5 years after that moment, I can easily discuss that things. At the moment when I approached to the government, I was not briefed on the position I was taking. When you go to the journalists, you are briefed about what they expect. When we entered the government, we worked 24/7, and we had to communicate very quickly what we were going to do. Entering the room where I was supposed to meet was the mass media. I read Ukrainska Pravda, and also I had preliminary discussions with the IMF. Actually, I tried to control each my word when delivering the briefing. That were very tough times, very responsible times, and I'm very happy that this business, not this enterprise had been carrying out its mission for 5 years and had become successful. I think that all of us know the issues, the problems around us. I would like to welcome you with this 5th anniversary. I have doubts about the word crisis in your name, whether it remains topical as of today. But I would like to thank you for this work because you work 24 hours, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. I would say the whole country were to work with this intensity, we would be much more ahead in our pace. Before you, we had an intervention from Mr. Bystrytsky, who reflected on the first days of the first post-Maidan government. Now we have third, fourth government after that, and he reflected on some moments which impressed him the most. One of those milestones that he mentioned when Ivaras left the government, then the e-declarations of the civil society activists, and the third is decriminalization of the corruption crimes or illegal gaining of wealth. So let us discuss some of those milestones. Although we are in the midst of uncertainty because of the future elections. Nevertheless, let's try. Okay, three things. The first is the dialogue with civil society and experts is of crucial importance. On my side, I tried to do everything possible to maintain this dialogue. When I was in the position of the minister, I did not realize that the Minister of Economy, it was a monster, huge monster. Back in 2012, I had several chances to attend the ministry when Petro Poroshenko invited us to the meetings. So when I entered the ministry, I needed the expert support to push up the reform agenda. Unfortunately, my reform work was not very much welcomed. When I heard that the minister held a lot of meetings and a lot of media interviews instead of internal meetings and signing up the documents. Right at that time, I had attended Federation of Family Business in Odessa. They invited me for the meeting, and this will be my answer to the third question. The more small and medium family businesses we have in the country, the better, the more successful, the more communication space will we have in the country. So, having visited that association of family businesses, I invited them to write down that in Facebook that we had a discussion meeting to discuss something important. So we need the collective intellect to be in the Ministry of Economy. When you recollected Ivaras, I immediately realized that he was happier with the successor than me. So I come to conclusion that I believe that the change of the Prime Minister means a huge lost opportunity, and at that time we lost a lot of influential supporters in the world who wanted to have another government from technical, professional government. 2.5, almost 3 years had passed, and we see the results today. And now your third question, or actually answer to your third question. After one of the elections, and here I would probably dispute with Yevhen Bystrytsky that we would be able to move very rapidly and even overcome Poland. We do not have any economic proofs for this theory. Unfortunately, EBRD produced an opinion back in 2014 that we are lagging behind Poland without any hope for successful growth. Actually, Poland is growing 5% in GDP per year, while our growth is much more slowly. Looking at Poland, we understand that they have a big difference which is decisive for their growth. This is entrepreneurial spirit of Polish society. Looking at 2015, we recollect that Prozora was launched, and I remember how Alexander Starodubtsev was appointed the head of the working group So transparency in running business allows small businesses to get access to public procurement operations. The regulation was launched again in 2014. We tried to simplify the business relations. Also, in 2014, jumped up 20 positions in the running business rating. So our overall objective is to become one of 10 top countries in doing business rating. When 2 years ago I had realized that no further changes or rapid progress was expected, I concentrated on the work with the cities, towns, and when I'd seen in Vinnytsia their measures, I realized that we should make this more rapidly. We still have a lot of things which hamper our business development for small and medium-sized businesses. Russia, Ukraine, Northern Korea, and Venezuela. There's only 5 countries which call this system, instead of registration system, call it the permit system. These are entrepreneurs who are keen to make business in this country and a wish to be registered. So we have to change this in legislation and in our minds. This is our deep difference from Poland. Poland does not celebrate the 8th of March because they try to get rid of Russian holidays. Poland tries to catch the German pace of development. They want to stack with their level of salaries. They want to stack with their pace of development. They want to stick with their pace of productivity growth. So in our nation, we would like to create the aura of entrepreneurship, innovations. Unfortunately, from 2014, we had made several steps towards the real commercial competition growth. We should demonopolize our economy and thus strengthen this aura of entrepreneurship and business in Ukraine. Any questions to Pavlo? Andriy Liberalism Institute. Pavlo and me discussed several things in 2013. What would you change in those 5 years through which you have survived? I never had any regrets about the past. Maybe it was not the ideal experience, I mean my presidential month, but that was optimal experience. I won't change that fact. I had an option. I opposed the appointment of deputy ministers from so-called reforming coalition. And of course, that was a painful experience. But nevertheless, I believe that was optimal decision to resign. We also have the issues with the international aid. At the moment when treasury is full, we have less appetite for reforms. Let's take this negative fact into consideration. That's why I wish that our treasury should remain half empty. In this case, we are more eager to implement our reform agenda. At the moment we become wealthier, we immediately become more lazy with our reform process. So, summing up to your question, I would speed up with implementation of reforms in the most communicant issues. Let's recollect that tobacco issue with Australia and the International Trade Organization. That case immediately was compromised in the World Trade Organization. So we, in coalition with Indonesia, Honduras, we complaint claimed against Australia. So I recollect this case. Everybody who approaches to the that huge grey building, I would advise to quit from this building for 1 or 2 even days a week. So at that time, I saw that the case was unlawful. So my advice would be to speed up with the reforms. What we keep saying today, the threat of populism, which we are facing today, whether we like it or not, it's a price, it's a cost of our compromise to which both civil society and the power representatives had a weakness to consign. And I think that Pavlo's resistance to the system proved that it was the right way of behavior. The populism itself is not bad. This is the trend around the world. Why it is so? Because the globalization reforms forced a lot of, or influenced negatively a lot of people, the majority of people around the world. So we should be honest. Having recollected Poland, we could say that in Poland, that way of globalization had brought better fruits than in the world in general. And that's why they are nevertheless having their issues with populists. So we have to find our response to the populism. So what can we offer to those people who lose because of reforms? Because populists offer them something.
The mic is not on. It's for the interpretation. And what if today you go to the same position? What would be the first 3 steps you would make? You complicate it all. While you were changing the mic, I thought about 1 step. It would be 1, 2, 3. I told you we need to be among top 10 of easiness of doing business in Ukraine. I believe this is our problem now, because including competition, which leads to serious changes, to serious reforms, anti-monopoly legislation and anti-monopoly processes. That's not just legislation, but execution of the legislation by the Anti-Monopoly Committee. That also makes it easier to conduct business, and also protection of ownership rights until we have a full protection of private ownership. It's difficult to talk about business in the country. Then 3A04, what is also an obstacle to business, 20% rate. How to fight that? That is up to the Ministry of Finance. But the Ministry of Economy is also there. I am for this German principle. When we have a good year, the Germans said we cannot have the budget deficit, and the Polish practically repeated it. And that now allows Polish populists to increase some budgets, and they go into the deficit, which is lower than our deficit. One of the main reasons of these high interest rates which do not give the business a good opportunity to develop, is the budget deficit, which pushes money out of the private market to the state treasury bills. We now will have lunch. The communication is very interesting. Thank you for being with us. These are dialogues in time, and that's dedicated to the 5th anniversary of our work. All the best to you. Thank you.